there we go. So welcome. Carrie, do you want to mute everyone except me?
Yeah.
Good morning, all. So if you have used Zoom over the last few months,
I'm on mute, though.
I think whoever said I'm on mute, you're not.
Oh.
So Zoom presents all kinds of wonderful opportunities for humor and new learning. So this morning we're going to work through this. We had originally planned, as many of you know, to be able to do this in person, but COVID-19 got in the way. So here we are a few months later, and we're doing this in this particular manner. And we hope that the content will be just as valuable and just as important. Let me give you a few pieces of information here as we start off. We are on Zoom, and if you've been on Zoom meetings, you know that small sounds in the background can become amplified and be very distracting. So we are going to mute everyone except the speaker. And when we get to a point that we're going to ask for your thoughts and some input, we'll then unmute. If you have nothing to offer at that point and might have some noise in the background, we'll ask that you mute yourself. If you don't know about how that works, you'll see a little microphone in the lower left corner. And if you click on that, it will turn red to indicate you are muted. We are also recording this. So the good news is you don't have to spend the next 2 hours taking notes. We will also send you a copy of the slide deck next week. So again, we encourage you to be here, be present, be with us, not worry about taking notes or doing anything that would distract you from participating in the program. Hopefully we will be able to provide you with everything that you need to capture the critical information. Carrie, Carrie's driving the slide program today. So are you able
see
to?
The slides, it's hard for me to tell because I have 3 screens. So you see the main slide and a few people on your screen.
We can see them.
No, I'm seeing the whole slide deck off to the left.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Is that better?
That's perfect. All right. So do you want to go to the next slide, please? So this is the way we envision our next 2 hours together. We're starting off with this information about our materials and the links and how you don't need to take notes. We'll introduce ourselves, give you a little background and a little bit of information about what to expect, and hopefully hear from you a little bit about what you're expecting in this workshop. We'll then go through an overview of advanced care planning and use some materials, the Go Wish materials, and have an opportunity to kind of stop and reflect on what's happening, what you're learning, how this information is sitting with you and prompting questions. And then we'll move into some of the specific steps involved in advanced care planning. Ooh, whoa, we have a whole, ooh, where is that noise coming from? Okay, thank you. It stopped.
I'm trying to mute people as they come on, so it won't do that.
Okay, okay. And then we'll move into some of the tools that are available. So let's get started. Let's go to the next slide, please, Carrie. Carrie, why don't you start? Why don't you start introducing yourself and tell us a little about how you got into doing this work? And you're muted.
Unmute myself. And somehow I can't see myself, so I hope I'm not making funny faces at you all. It's hard to, I think, navigate video and all that sometimes on Zoom. So my name is Karri Benjamin. I'm Marty's daughter, and I have worked in a number of industries, mainly focusing on quality. I became a staff coach for through John Deere, and so Mom and I both really enjoy coaching. And I decided I was passionate about healthcare, and when I transitioned to working in healthcare, I started going to classes in public health. And at that point, I was introduced to the role of advanced care planning during an ethics class, actually. And we all completed our advanced directive. And, you know, as students in an ethics class, it was really interesting to hear each other's stories. And we had a project that we had to turn in related to advanced care planning. In my public health degree, I joined IHI, which is Institute for Healthcare Improvement. And it's quality improvement focused, and they have a number of different programs. And one of those programs is the Conversation Project. And a lot of student groups across the country started having events related to advanced care planning, really illustrating the importance of having these conversations throughout our life, throughout our lifespan. So you can imagine there were students in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And so we're really talking about advanced care planning for ourselves and learning for ourselves, and then also offering to the community an opportunity to have conversations together. After that, I worked in a hospital, one of the only level 1 trauma centers in Oregon, and I was very passionate about the topic and started helping to integrate these conversations into goals of care planning in multiple care settings across the organization with primary care, preoperative areas, and ICUs. And recently I moved to Baja last year to be with my family, and I joined UCSD Health System as a transformation coach. So in this department, what we do is a lot of improvement processes. And the topic of advanced care planning came up as a workshop, and I was so excited. I was like, oh, this is me. Please let me facilitate this one. So really, we performed observations across our entire system about how we deal with advanced care planning processes at UCSD Health. And really started to get more of an understanding of how we can take advanced care planning conversations and integrate it into care across the continuum of care. So it's not just end of life care. The ICU nurses are like, we need to have these conversations end of life. And so even getting them to help them understand, no, we need to have them through our lives so that all of our loved ones know what our wishes are. So our future state at UCSD Health is to have all team members with an advanced care plan and have them trained and have them ready to help families have these conversations through the entire spectrum of care. So I'm really excited to bring some of that information to you guys and help everybody in Baja have conversations with their families as well.
Let me unmute myself here. Great, thanks, sweetie. So the way I came to this work was actually about 5 years ago. I attended a conference in Portland where Karri lived at the time. And I attended a session on the Conversation Project. And over dinner that evening with Karri, I said, oh, I went to this great workshop. And, I was thinking, okay, this is the way I will introduce to her that we need to have conversations. And instead what happened was she said, oh yeah, I've been working on that and we should be having these conversations. And so for me, it was a very easy transition. We have had numerous conversations over the last 5 years having to do with our plans for healthcare. It's interesting to think of the conversation, but in truth, it's a series of conversations. So Karri and I and the rest of our family have done advanced directives, but we also understand that advanced care planning is more than that. Advanced care planning is a series of conversations that has to do with understanding values and what's important. So here we are 5 years into this. We've had conversations, we have documents, we have copies of documents, we've done legal processes, etc. When I started talking about facilitating this particular workshop, I realized that I had on my laptop the draft of a wishes letter to my children, my spouse, and my niece that I had been working on for about 2 years and had not yet completed. So I took the time, finished that, sent that out. And as Karri and I were working on this, we actually were going across the border to pick up some stuff, and we were in the car and in the line at the border and talking back and forth. And we discovered that when Karri took her job at UCSD about 1.5 years ago, she had named me as her emergency contact, but I didn't know that. And at that point, I didn't have any information about what would I do if I were to get a call from her employer saying, oh, Karri has had an accident at work and we need you to make some decisions. So the reason we share that with you is just first, so you know this is a process that goes on over the course of a lifetime. And the more comfortable you become with talking about plans for healthcare, the more relevant it can be in your life. So Karri, let's go to the next slide. And let's take a few minutes to talk about this workshop and how we will spend our time this morning. So when you signed up for this workshop, you must have had some expectation about what this would be. So Karri, could you unmute everyone? And I'd like to hear from a couple of people your response to this question. This workshop, or this statement, fill in the blanks. This workshop will be valuable to me if.
So I'll start. My name's Jim. I think this workshop would be very valuable to me if I leave it having a set of tasks to do to get myself and my wife and my family ready for the inevitable.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Someone else.
I'm trying to unmute all, but
Okay.
it's not working.
Okay, so if you want to speak and you see a little red microphone in the left corner, please click on that so it will disappear and you'll be able to speak.
Well, I think I'm unmuted now.
You are.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, I've had a little time to think about this workshop since we started talking about the Conversation Project last year sometime. And it's an interesting question because in thinking about it today, I realized that it will be valuable to me if I just feel more prepared. If I just feel more prepared for the conversation, if I feel more prepared for the decisions, if I come away with more knowledge, which I already have.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Great.
Hi, I'm unmuted. This is Carol. And I wanted to move this along because, and I'm so glad that you see it as a process, because we had started this advanced planning some time ago and kind of left it and thought, okay, well, it's done. And now, of course, many things have changed. So I'm glad it will be very valuable to me to get the process moving again with the whole group of people. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Good. I think while COVID-19 got in the way of our being able to be together in one physical space as we go through this process today, the other thing it has done is to highlight for us that we probably need to be thinking about this in our life today, not just some years down the road when we get older, whatever that means. I mean, it's always older for me is always, I don't know, 10 years beyond where I am. So to think about, so I'm going to share with you a conversation that Len had just this morning. He was talking with a longtime friend who said, oh yeah, we have our advanced directives and, you know, all of that. And he said, well, have you talked with your daughter about your healthcare wishes? No, why would I need to do that? And he said, well, if you were to get COVID-19 and become very ill, would you want to be intubated? Like, oh, that's a decision that I hadn't really considered. That's an advanced care planning decision. And so we've all been hearing on the news a lot about people on ventilators and some people coming off of those and saying, oh, I never ever want to have that happen again. And other people saying, thank goodness I had a ventilator because I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. So there are some very real and very visible topics for us to consider. So while COVID-19 took away our opportunity to be together in person today, it also gave us a light to illuminate the importance of this discussion. So let's move on with the discussion. Carrie, would you take the next, advance to the next slide and start walking us through the major steps? Thanks.
And unmute myself. Okay, so as I mentioned in the beginning, I am very involved in advanced care planning workflows at UCSD Health, and we are part of a hospital system that works with Prepare for Your Care, and it's an organization in California. And I think you all got this flyer when you signed up for this workshop. So go ahead and read it over at your leisure. So there are 5 major steps to advanced care planning, and I think we've already kind of illustrated some of these. Like it's an ongoing process. All of what we've talked about so far is really before the 5 steps that healthcare system sees as the steps to advanced care planning. So we're going to talk really about the first 3 today, and then hopefully you will feel empowered to do the last 2, which is tell others about your wishes and ask doctors some questions. So you have that in your toolbox already, and we're going to give you a lot more tools by the end of this and send these to you. So also, I want to mention, please share this widely with your friends and family. When you go to the website, prepareforyourcare.org, which is listed on this, you will find the California Advanced Directive, some really great videos. We're going to send you some links for that, and it'll really help illustrate the continuum of advanced care planning. So a couple other things I really want to mention quickly is about having conversations with your family and friends. Some people, they just like I do this a lot. I've shared with my family, and my dad will still be like, I don't want to talk about it. Just make a decision for me. Like that means the end of life, you know, and it doesn't. So some people, I think a lot of the students that we work with, we're really starting to integrate this into conversations. So pregnant woman goes to the hospital, and her and her husband say, we need to talk. What if something bad happens? So is it me or the baby? And so they're both like, it's you. It's, you know, we'll do what we can, you know, if we can save the baby, but if anything happens, we're definitely choosing you. So the next time they go to the hospital, same couple, and they say, oh gosh, we really didn't plan for this. Again, here we are in the elevator, and with a higher risk pregnancy, and they both, you know, have the conversation. It's like, okay, it's not me, it's the baby. So that illustrates, just in a couple of years of young people, they changed the narrative of what it means to them. And there's so many different complicated decisions that can be made about who to save, what kind of machine to be on. I guess if kids or family don't want to talk about it because of a fear of death, maybe flip the scenario and talk about, well, can you tell me what you would want if something happens to you? You know, so then they're not thinking, oh, mom wants to tell me about what she wants to end of life. Like, flip it and let's talk about it throughout our lives. And as mom mentioned earlier, we both really are passionate about this, and we still forget to tell each other. So just make sure that I mean, there's such a taboo around it, and we're doing everything we can at UCSD Health to try and break some of that down, and just want to, hopefully the community can also. So I want to talk about advanced care planning. So kind of some shared decision making that happens. So when you're thinking about setting your goals of your care, what are your values? What are your hopes, your wishes? What is your personhood about? What's your life story? What really has meaning to you? Actually, I was thinking about it more this week, and I was like, if something happened to me right now, I would want my dogs to be with me. So, I mean, I've never expressed that to anybody. And so the more that you think about it, and you really start realizing it's about what gives meaning to your life, not necessarily, do I need to be on a ventilator or not? There are some medical options: ventilators, pressors, code status, antibiotics, the disposition. So if you do not tell your care providers what to do, they are legally bound to make certain decisions and do everything they can to save your life, which means putting you on whatever. And if all you've told your family is just no machines, just let me go, there are such a spectrum of machines that you could be put on. So maybe you'd be on a machine for a few hours or a couple days or something like that. And people that are not medical care providers don't really understand what that spectrum is. So this just gives you kind of a way to look at shared decision making when you're going into this. So advanced care planning starts with a conversation, and an advanced directive is a form that you can fill out. I know a lot of providers that just fill out the blank form. I also know providers that have a very complicated, pages long advanced directive because they've worked in the ED and they've seen so much, and they're like, if this happens, then do this. And then if that happens, then do this. And this huge algorithm. So you can do a lot of different things with your advanced directive or making your wishes known. there's a medical decision maker that you would want to name. So mom just talked about, I named her as a medical decision maker. And a lot of times you just assume, well, it's going to be your spouse or your kids. And it's really important just to make sure that you say who you want and you let that person know what gives your life meaning and what you want. And then there's a post. So this really is an end of life thing. So a doctor can write an order for life-sustaining treatment. So it's a form that gives seriously ill patients more control over their end of life care through that conversation with their doctor. So they don't have an advanced directive or the doctor can't access it. So I work for UCSD, but I'm actually a SHARP patient. So my SHARP doctor has my advanced directive. But if I'm on site at UCSD and they need to treat me, they wouldn't know what to do because I don't have it on file in that health system. So it's really important to understand that to make sure your loved ones know where to find this and information, and that if you are at multiple places that a care team would need to make a decision for you, that they have it on file. Another example, I fly to Portland. My dad's in Portland. So what if I'm in Portland and something happens? Does my dad know where to find it? Do I have it on file anywhere in that health system? Do I have it with me? Do I have, so just think through some different scenarios and what can you do to plan to make sure your wishes are carried out. And truly your caregivers want to follow your wishes. I can say a lot of caregivers have, that I know have really struggled with giving people life-sustaining treatment that they don't think that person wants and that costs a lot of money, and they have to because they're legally bound because that person or their family has not made it clear, or families argue over it. So there's a whole spectrum of things that can happen. I think we've covered this a lot. What gives your life meaning? What matters most to you? And what do you love to do? And what you can't live without. So those are some things to really talk about and think about as you're having conversation. I think, as mom mentioned, her and I have this conversation a lot. Actually, I had a friend at work say, "Oh, you're working on advanced care planning. That's great. Everybody does that, right?" And I said, "No, not everybody." She's like, "What? My family, we all the way through my life, we always have that conversation." And I said, "Well, you're not like everybody, so that's great. What can I learn from you? Tell me how you do it. What do you guys do?" So there's a lot of different ways.
Carrie, can I jump in here and add one more thing that I thought of this morning? We often think healthcare planning, and we kind of think of it in the context of a serious accident or a serious illness and something that has a sudden onset and decisions have to be made in that environment. I have a good friend whose mother had Alzheimer's. And as most of us know, that is not usually a one-time decision about care. It's a series of decisions. And it's perhaps the best example I can think of the importance of addressing these questions, not just whether you want machines or not. Because when a patient is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they suddenly or gradually are not able to communicate about these important issues, to understand what's important to them, to understand what has given their life meaning, to understand what it is they would not want to live without. There will be a whole series of decisions. And so basing them on values, not just on the amount of medical care, is an important distinction to keep in mind as you think about these options. So that's it. Go ahead. That was all I wanted to add.
Thank you. That's great. So we are going to do a little game. And there's actually a website, Go Wish, and they have cards, and it's a whole game that you can actually play, and I think it's $10. So if you're interested in getting that, you can find Go Wish website. It's really, really easy to find. We can send you a link to it. We modified it for our advanced care planning group visits that we do. And so this was emailed to you. If I will go ahead and display our version of the Go Wish handout. And hopefully you had a chance to look it over when we emailed it to you. So we're gonna take a couple minutes here and have you guys circle the 5 things on the list that are the biggest, highest priority to you when you think about your care planning.
Carrie, do you also want to mention the wild card?
Yeah, so there's a wild card. So if we have not, or if they have not thought of something that matters the most to you, go ahead and fill it in, whatever that is. So on here, it doesn't say, bring my dogs to my bedside. So I might want to fill that in.
I'd add one more note of instruction. If there are things on this list that you have already taken care of, so for example, if you have your financial affairs in order, that just gives you another space on this list that you can fill in as a priority. So don't feel like you need to count it among your top 5 if it's something you've already taken care of.
I wish I could.
I was trying to unmute everybody again. So if you are done with this and you want to share, we would love to hear from a couple people.
Okay. Not being connected to machines, to die at home if possible, to say goodbye to the important people in my life, to be able to help others, and to have my funeral arrangements made.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Is that something that you had already thought through, or did this give you an opportunity to think through that?
I pretty much thought through it. Yeah, I mean, there's some things on here which I could sort of say I'm already at peace with God. I meditate and, you know, try to be, you know, centered, so to speak. And whose life is ever complete. It's an ongoing process. So
We hope so.
Hi,
can
this is,
share. Go ahead.
this is John DiCecco. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well,
Hi,
I'm
John.
not being connected to machines, but that's a complicated, all-inclusive statement, and it doesn't talk about a feeding tube. And I've been in situations, particularly with my family, where the feeding tube just seems to be prolonging things, and it's very difficult to reverse. So I think that's for me. I don't want to be connected unnecessarily to machines unless there's really a great hope of recovery. And I put it that way. So, it's not a yes or no. The other thing is to die at home, and particularly with COVID-19, seeing people die alone in the hospital where their families can't be with them was so terrible. And it really made me think along about, do I really want to go to the States and be vented and perhaps die? It's a really tough decision, but I really think I don't want to die in that way. So it really impacts my thinking, particularly around COVID. And to have family with me, therefore, would be really important. And I think to have a doctor who knows me as a whole person seems like a magical wish in our healthcare system. I really think that's important to me. And then to have a nurse that I feel comfortable with, all of those things to me seem to be so important in the end of life experience.
So this is Len. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I had a wild card, which is I want to be me at the end. My personality, myself. That's important to me. I want to have an advocate who knows my values and priorities. I think that's safer than doctors and nurses today. I don't want to feel pain, and I want to keep my sense of humor. So if I have my sense of humor, that's a large part of what makes life worth living for me.
Roger asked me to share his. He said he would like to be free from pain, to have family with me, to be at peace, to pray, and to keep a sense of humor. And mine is different. Mine would be to have my family prepared for my death. I'm a planner. To have an advocate who knows my values and priorities, to have my funeral arrangements made, to have financial affairs in order, and to have family with me. And I think I'd add that because we live in Baja, some of those are more important to me than they might be if I were in the US, because my understanding of passing away in Baja, it can be pretty complicated, and you don't want your body to go off with the coroner, and some of those things have me a little concerned because I can't seem to get a real straight answer. So in some ways it seems easier to be in the US and die so my kids could get to me or do what I needed them to do. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Well, let me speak to that by saying that we have a program coming up next month as a follow-on to this program. John DiCecco has been putting together a lot of information, a lot of detailed information about some of those very practical, logistical things that are important to all of us living in Baja. So at the end of our time today, I'll give you more information about that. But that's an upcoming program that will follow this one. So thank you for mentioning that, and we can put that on next month's program.
Hi, this is Carol again. There are a couple of things on the list that really make me wonder, know that I need to find out more information. One is to have a doctor who knows me as a whole person. And I have a really good doctor at Kaiser, but I'm really wondering, I need to find out at Kaiser and from him if he would actually be the person in charge with my my medical decision maker to decide what's going to happen, because Kaiser kind of works very strangely when people are in the hospital. So that isn't, there are many questions here that I think I need to make, to do some research on.
Carol, that is such a good point, because many health systems today have doctors that work only in the hospital. They're called hospitalists, and they work in the hospital and care for patients while they are in the hospital. So the primary care physician has less time in the hospital. And that's a very good point to think about. Will the doctor who knows you as a person be the one who will be there for your medical decision maker to talk with and to interact with? Or will it be a hospitalist who is just going to look at what you have on file? And then that leads to, so what information does your medical decision maker then need to have that they can supplement that advance directive or that document, that official document on file? Good point.
So,
I'm really glad you
good
raised it.
point. Part of the reason that we had a workshop, improvement workshop on advanced care planning at UCSD Health is that we realized our electronic health records system from outpatient primary care wasn't coming over into the hospital side of things. The background was broken in our electronic health record. So that was one of the patches that they were looking for, and we took the opportunity to really redo the whole entire stream of workflows. But it could happen. I mean, it depends on your health system. And sorry, we should have mentioned early on, it's hard to facilitate, talk, and monitor chat, and I see there are some chat in there. We'll definitely address that at the end if we can. If not, we'll do it in our follow-up email. And there's one in there about VA medical benefits. And I actually do know quite a bit about VA medical benefits because my dad is a disabled vet. And I got his disabled status because of his health conditions. And so it is really complicated system. I mean, compared to anything that I've ever seen, and I work in the system. So let's go ahead and take one more if anybody else wants to share.
I'd like to share something.
Great.
I had a very interesting response to this list, which is there is nothing on this list that I wouldn't want. So it felt like a false dichotomy to me to say, oh, choose 5, because it wasn't like a values list or something like, I'm going to choose something besides being clean. It just felt like there's nothing on this list I wouldn't want. So why would I not ask for everything on this list? Of course, that might be my personality coming through. I don't know, but the other people are satisfied with 5. I just didn't see anything on here that didn't feel fundamentally important for quality end of life care, having supported people just recently through end of life. I wanted every single thing on this list for them and worked very hard to get it.
That's a really great point. I wonder if, like Mom had mentioned earlier, like if your financial orders are in line, like check that off. You already did it. So I wonder if this list might help go through some preparations that you can do. And I mean, some people say, I don't want to be on a machine. Well, a lot of people have kidney failure, and they live on dialysis for years, and they live great lives, and they need kidney dialysis. They come on and they go off. So, I mean, just to say machines, it's, if you want to say, I don't want to live on a ventilator, that's different. So I like your perspective. I actually think I had the same reaction when I read this myself. I'm like, what can I do to get them all?
Well, and I think that's really, I think that's an important point. There's nothing here that is unimportant. The reality is that sometimes a medical decision maker is forced to make a choice. So they might be forced to make the choice about whether you stay at home or whether you go to the hospital. And yes, this would be, yes, it would be for many people ideal to be at home. My own sister at the end of her life made a decision that she wanted to go to the hospital. And she had not expressed her wishes, but she woke up one morning and urgently wanted to get to the hospital. I mean, was pushing her husband and my sisters and myself to get her there right away. She really wanted to go, which was very strange to us because she had always gotten out of the hospital as soon as she possibly could. She had multiple myeloma for over 8 years. And so she would sometimes go in and have to have blood transfusion. And if it ended at 3 o'clock in the morning, she would insist on going home at 3 o'clock in the morning, not staying until 7 or 8 because she did not want to be in the hospital 1 minute longer than necessary. So we were all quite taken aback when one morning she said, "I want to go, take me now." And when we got her to the hospital, finally, it was one of the nurses who had seen her many times over the 9 years who kicked us all out of the room, closed the door, sat down at the chair at the bedside and said, "Okay, Jeannie, what are you doing here now?" And that's when Jeannie finally said, "I don't want to die at home because I know my husband loves that house and will continue to live there. And I don't want my death to be a bad memory for him in that house. I want to be here." So none of us, that's an example of having those decisions that sometimes it is trade-offs. They all are wonderful options, but the purpose and the point of a forced choice exercise is just that. You may not be able to get it all. So if you can't get it all, what areas do you want your decision maker to specifically focus on? And some may be more important to you than others. Maybe it's okay to be in the hospital for a few days. Maybe it's okay. Maybe you would choose to have a moderate level of pain and be more conscious, be more aware of your surroundings. Those are some choices that end up happening with medical care. I can see that Carrie is moving us on in our discussion. Thank you for keeping us on track.
Just real quick, I see a note about medical decision makers. We're going to go a little more into that a little later on. So hopefully we'll be able to answer those questions.
Great. Okay. So we want to stop at this point and just reflect a little bit on where we are right now. So as we've gone through this, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts about what has challenged you in what we've talked about so far? What has surprised you? What has been very easy for you? And what will you take with you from what we've covered in the last 49 minutes? So Carrie, can you unmute everyone? Or if people who want to speak can unmute themselves.
Hi, this is Doug. Can you hear me?
And some people can. Yes.
Yes, you can. Well, I actually think the most important thing about this is that it's taken all this planning from being an abstract notion that we should address at some point to something that we really need to deal with right now. So it's been surprising to me that I hadn't dealt with it before, that it was always something I was going to do at some point, but this has given it an immediacy. And also the situation with the COVID-19 obviously has given it an immediacy for us all. For example, we changed financial arrangements and beneficiaries right away as soon as the COVID. While I'm on the topic though, I'd like to add one more thing from my wild card was to be free from fear, to not be afraid of dying, not be afraid of what it would bring, because death, especially in the States, is like, oh my God, you're dying. But what we have learned from living in Mexico is that death and life are all part of the same cycle that we're all on at whatever point we are in it. And I'm gonna take what these things really need to be addressed in my life and in our lives.
Thank you for that, Doug. Someone else have a thought about what we've done so far? There's some hammering going on somewhere. If that person could mute their microphone, please.
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciate, you know, being pushed to have some structure around this whole thing, because I tend not to. And one thing which may be addressed in the upcoming workshop, I don't have a doctor down here. I don't have health insurance. I don't deal with allopathic medicine at all, except for, you know, hopefully not too many emergencies and occasional diagnostics like blood tests and so forth. But I went to a doctor recently here because I understand that if you don't have a Mexican doctor to sign off on cause of death, that they're going to stick in the deep freeze at the police station for a couple weeks or whatever and do an autopsy, which I certainly don't want. But, you know, unfortunately, like so many doctors, he immediately wanted to, you know, write me prescriptions for medications, which I don't want. So, you know, I'm still looking for the ideal medical, you know, point person, so to speak. But as I said, maybe that'll be addressed in the upcoming workshop.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments?
This is Carol again. What has surprised me is some of the questions that I thought I had really thought about a lot of this and kind of taken care of it. And it's amazing to me how much extra thought I need to put into this, and how much I need to talk to my spouse and to my daughter. So it's, I'm really appreciative. I'm really appreciative for all of the questions.
Great, good. Well, and as we move into the next part of this program, we'll help you with some tools, some things that will provide some structure, as was mentioned, to have these conversations. It's a big topic. One of the, I guess I'm going to steal a little of our thunder from a few minutes from now. One of the things that Ellen Goodman, the founder of the Conversation Project, has shared with us about how this happened is that she and her mother had a very close relationship, and they talked about everything, but they didn't talk about end of life, and they didn't talk about care decisions, except that when someone would be in that situation, her mother would say to her, "If that's me, just pull the plug." And Ellen Goodman said, when her mother, who suffered from Alzheimer's, began to deteriorate, I found out there was no plug. And suddenly she was in a position of needing to make decisions and being very ill prepared to do so because she really did not know what her mother wanted. She talked about how she wished she could have her mother sitting on her shoulder, whispering in her ear, you know, do this or don't do that. So this is really the process of being there, sitting on the shoulder of your medical decision maker and whispering in their ear, if we have to make trade-offs, here's what's most important to me. So let's move on to the next slide, Carrie. Carrie, are you there? Oh, there you are. Thank you.
I am. I think I did.
You did. I guess I blinked and you did. So we probably can imagine some of this or have seen some of this. What happens when you don't have these conversations? Well, one of the things that happens is that people can, in their hope to avoid these decisions, and because they truly don't want to face end-of-life decisions, they might be overly optimistic. And they just kind of say, well, you know, we're just going to hope for the best here. The other possibility is, like I just described with Ellen Goodman, that her mother just assumed she would know what to do. When decisions need to be made, it's often in a time of great stress. There's high anxiety, and there's often time pressure. It's hard to say, stop, wait, I need to take a half hour to think about this, when the medical team is saying, we need to know what to do now. It's not impossible to do that, but sometimes the circumstances make it difficult to do that. So the more advanced in the care planning process we can be, the more empowered decision makers are. And as Carrie mentioned, there are certain laws in place that require providers to provide care to a certain level unless you have indicated otherwise. So in the absence of directives and information, they will start certain life-saving measures that they may even know will be unsuccessful. They will consume healthcare resources that do not produce a good outcome, and may even cause pain, discomfort, harm to the patient, but they're required to do it if you have not expressed your wishes. So I hope, if nothing else, this makes the point how important it is to do this. Next slide. The flip side of that coin is, what can you expect as an outcome when you do have these advanced care planning conversations? Well, you can expect an improved quality of life just coming from the clarity that exists between you and your medical decision maker. You can expect to have a higher satisfaction level with your care because you've made these decisions, because you've said, no, I want to be comfortable, I don't want to feel pain, or I do want to be aware of my surroundings, or whatever it is that is important to you. The decision makers often carry a terrible burden. I'm sure most of us have an experience of a family that has been really torn apart by disagreements over healthcare decisions. Some people saying you do everything possible, others saying this is not the way that person would want to live, someone else saying, you know, we have to try this. A good friend of mine in Reno was with her sister and her sister's son at the end of her life. Her sister developed pneumonia. She had said, I don't want extraordinary measures. The son said, well, an antibiotic is not an extraordinary measure. My friend said, wait a minute. She said she does not want measures that prolong life. An antibiotic for a pneumonia patient will prolong life. So those are the kinds of decisions that can be worked through with advanced care planning. So let's go on to the next slide, if we could, please. So the brochure that you received, the Prepare for Care brochure, describes choosing the medical decision maker as the first priority. I have to take a little bit of exception with that. I think the first priority is to get clear in your own mind what's important, and then to begin to choose your medical decision maker. So when you choose your medical decision maker, I mean, often there are assumptions about who it will be. It'll be my spouse, it'll be the oldest child, it'll be my sister, it'll be, you know, whoever it is. We encourage you to take a more objective approach to making that decision. look for a person who will be willing to make decisions in line with your wishes. Someone who may have wishes that are different than yours, may be very emotional about it. Are they still able to honor your wishes? Will they commit to that? And do you know them to be a person who could do that in a stressful situation? Will they be comfortable speaking up on your behalf? So particularly in many care settings, I was going to say particularly in the emergency department, but it's true in many care settings that life is kind of rushed and hectic in care settings. So nurses don't have a lot of time. They're often caring for probably more patients at one time than they would choose to in many circumstances. And again, COVID-19 has reminded us of the truth of that. Will your medical decision maker be a person who can stop the maddening pace to say, wait a minute, if we do this, what would be the expected outcome? Or to say, stop, I don't understand what you just said to me, when the doctor rattles off some medical terminology that no one below a third-year medical student could ever understand. Will your medical decision maker be someone who can make a decision today, and then when things have changed tomorrow, can reevaluate and again go back to that base of what are your values, what's important to you, what gives life meaning, and what decision do we need to make today? So it may not be your oldest child. It may not be your spouse. It may not be your sister. It may be a close friend who's known you for a long time. It may be someone or something else. So being able to find someone who will really be your representative. We often refer to this person as a healthcare agent. And I kind of like that term as opposed to decision maker, because it implies that representation, that they are really speaking to your care and your wishes as opposed to decisions in a broader spectrum. Carrie, I know you had an example that you wanted to offer, and I think we might have kind of walked over it earlier, about one of the people in a workshop you did who didn't want to choose between her children. And so she came up with a kind of creative solution about medical decision making. Can you share that story?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in the day and age of COVID and Zoom, we are now doing our advanced care planning group visits on Zoom, which is great. We have a doctor there, we have a bunch of other staff there, and they're limiting it, so there's not too many people. So it's just a handful of people. And one thing I can say is we learned so much about each other and about how to do advanced care planning from the different perspectives of people that were sharing. So one of the ladies was concerned that she wanted her daughter-in-law to be her medical decision maker or healthcare agent. And the daughter-in-law, they were like, we've talked about it and we have like our own language, and her actual kids don't really understand what we're saying or what she wants. And one of the other ladies on the call spoke up and said, well, my kids, I have two kids. I could not pick one or the other. One's too emotional and wouldn't, stop to think about what I want. And the other one isn't emotional enough. And I couldn't pick between the two because they would get mad if I did. She said, and I think she spent some time working in healthcare, so she is able to understand all the different algorithms of things that can happen in the hospital, or if you need to be making decisions about your care. So she actually took her advanced care plan and said, if I need to be on a ventilator, she said specifically, if I need to be on a ventilator for more than 3 days, or if I need to be on other life-sustaining care for more than 3 days, then I don't want you to. Keep me on. I want to just go ahead and let me pass. Unless all of my family hasn't made it to say goodbye for their closure. So she put very specifics about exactly which machines it bothers her or she doesn't want to be on. She put how many days, and she put other criteria in there, unless my family needs me to be there so they can say goodbye. So you can really write out anything. And I also see in our chat, there's a question about updating people having 2 advance directives with 2 different decision makers. So the person that did not update, made a new advance directive and didn't tell the other person, here's a new one, and this other person is, that's where we get stuck in healthcare. We can't make these decisions for families. Families are responsible to have these conversations and name the person that they want. And doctors and nurses get in the middle of it all of the time, and they're really skilled at trying to work together. We have a whole ethics team that brings in social work and tries to determine, how can we mediate with this family and help them come to terms with whatever decisions they have to make. So we have a lot of those resources, but wouldn't it be great if families could have these conversations through their entire life? Even if the 2 decision makers disagree, could that person have had enough conversations to where they do know what you want? So we're really talking today about a lot more upstream than ending up in that situation. And that's what we want to change our culture into, more upstream conversations. And we're going to talk next about some tools to do that. But I just wanted to say, it isn't a this or that, or you can write complicated whatever you want into your healthcare planning documents.
I want to just add one more thing. This topic is so rich, I suspect that I could be saying I want to add just one more thing on each one of these for probably a day and a half, but I'll spare you that. One of the things that Len pointed out is that when we did our advanced care planning and Len designated Karri as one of the decision makers, it also became important for him to notify his family, his sister and his nephew, that Karri had been designated as his healthcare agent. So that if at the point in time that they knew that these decisions were being made, there wouldn't be an argument at that moment as to who it was. So again, choosing and letting people who should know what those choices are. So I think now we want to go do that video. Is that right, Karri? How did I lose this? Karri, you're muted.
Oh, I still keep talking.
There you are. Okay. All right.
Luckily, we have Len there for tech support to make sure that we can hear. We'll let you know if we can't.
Okay, so what I need to do then is to share my screen, right? And what happened to my, okay.
You have to minimize that.
Okay, there's that. Then I have to go back here, right? Share screen. No, there she is.
Okay.
Oh, and then share right here.
Yes. And now you'll see here, this where those dots are. Keep going up.
I can't. It's
And
not.
share. See that share screen? Is it right there? Right,
Where?
I see your screen.
you're right by it.
Yeah, I don't
That-
see these dots though.
You will if you hit that red button.
That's stop sharing.
Um,
That's what it is.
okay. So share again. Okay. Now see those dots
Yes.
right there, and then share sound.
Share computer sound. Okay. So are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Great. Now, how do I make that?
Join you in something right at the heart of the American family.
So sorry.
How we can all help the people who care about us make decisions near the end of our lives and not.
Almost there.
Out of 10 of you have told us that we should all be talking about it at all ages, what we want. And yet only a fraction of us have done it. And we know it makes a huge difference in the health of the caregiver as well as those cared for. So ABC News has taken cameras inside a vital, loving family, part of a new community, deciding to have the conversation.
This is 85-year-old Norb and his daughter Maureen.
My dad is 85 today. He's still very, very active. He's a wonderful friend.
Throughout life, daughter and father have always talked about everything, except one thing: how to control the end of your life in the same way you control the prime of your life. So dad and daughter gather the family together, 3 generations, for an act of love.
And so now we're just asking that you share some of your thoughts about what you would like at the end of your life, so that we can honor your wishes.
They are part of something new underway for families in America that says having the conversation is a gift parents and children give each other. And there's proof of the difference it makes. Studies show depression rates plummet after a loss if the families have had the conversation. Renowned physician Dr. Atul Gawande says doctors and nurses see it firsthand.
Well, when you're there in that moment and you're talking to the family and you're saying, how much will it bother your father if he ends up this way? And they say, more often than not, I don't know. We never talked about it. That it is incredibly traumatic for the family, for the doctors involved. There's often conflict. It can tear families apart.
So Dr. Gawande has become part of a team led by Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Ellen Goodman. It is called the Conversation Project. It is a kind of guide for families looking for a way to begin.
If we give them a way to talk about it and give people something to hang on to when they're afraid to start this conversation, they can do it and pass it on.
Families like the Jennings. They looked over the conversation guide before they sat down together. First, there's laughter.
My golf swing's still good.
And then Dad directly eases his daughter's guilt and worry about having put their mother in hospice.
I felt like that meant we were giving up on Mom.
She was in a lot of pain, and I think it was handled real well.
And next, Maureen asks her dad for clarity on what he considers a good end to a great life.
So if you were in a condition where you couldn't make decisions for yourself, how extreme would you want us to take measures to save your life versus letting you go?
Well, I think I'm ready to go anytime. You know, I wouldn't prolong anything. I mean, I've lived a great life. Pretty lucky. And because of you guys, you know.
Unexpectedly, a grandson is inspired to speak up about his own wishes for his own life.
That if there was no meaningful communication, that I would want you to stop trying to intervene.
We aren't ready for you to go that soon.
Well, we're not ready for you to go that soon either, so.
One by one, the others weigh in, all ages.
People don't do that.
Happy birthday, dear grandma.
And with that, another family has joined a kind of estate planning for the heart.
Go!
The conversation beginning in America.
So please tell us your stories in the days ahead about ways to begin the conversation with family members of all ages. Or if you don't want to have it, tell us about that too. My colleague and my friend, anchor Bill Ritter from WABC, and I will be reading your emails and looking at the great photos you're already sending us of your families. So go to abcnews.com, find the conversation and the guide, and we'll be seeing you right there.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to share the conversation starter kit with you guys. So we're giving you tools. We're going to send you links. We have sent you some documents. These are all tools. So the Go Wish game is a tool. It's quick and simple. You might want to just do that. Conversation starter kit is also a tool. And you can see that a lot of families have used it successfully. So we will send you a link to this. Just want to mention that before I start on a different screen so I can look at it. So I wanted to review the website, the conversationproject.org. And this is the impetus of starting a conversation. I'll also point out that they do have a brand new guide specific to COVID-19. And this is really helpful for us in the hospital. As soon as we found this, we linked this directly to our webpage. And actually, we have it where we can pull it up on iPads for family members at the bedside. Because as was mentioned earlier, some people cannot have their families present. So we're having iPads and video chats with them and giving them the opportunity to see their families and have these conversations. So hopefully many more in the healthcare industry will also do this. So here's a conversation project. There's starter kits, tools, a little more about them. You know, there's some blogs, there's ways to get involved. This is how Mom and I got involved. We clicked on this link and started to see what can we do. And as I mentioned, I worked with students on this, and Mom has brought this to a number of churches and organizations that she's worked with and really try to share the word. And we would love if all of you do the same at whatever capacity you're comfortable. So if you scroll down, there's a number of things. Right at the top, it's going to say start your conversation today. I'm going to click on that in just a minute. There's some other things here. So being prepared in the time of COVID is really important because it's really important right now for people to be able to share with their families. And luckily we do have video chats nowadays or phone calls. So there's conversation starter kit, choosing and being a healthcare proxy. So this is also a kit that gets at what we just went over. So having your healthcare agent or your medical decision maker. So this is a really great tool also to step you through like how to choose, and then when you do choose, maybe sharing it with that person so they know what's being asked of them. There's a specific starter kit for Alzheimer's and dementia because they're not with it. They're not able to really have the conversation at the same level that they would. So this is a really important if you or anybody you know runs into this situation. And also how to talk to your doctor. So one of our leads of advanced care planning, and I'll just share real quick, at UCSD, he says, my wife and I are both palliative care nurses. When she was pregnant, we told our OB that we would be having this conversation. They warned her like 3 times that they would want to have this conversation before they go in to give birth. And still that care provider was like, I don't know how to have this conversation. So, I mean, a lot of caregivers go into a specific specialty because it's tough for them to deal with other areas of healthcare. And so this really gives you a tool to how to talk to your doctor. There are also links for healthcare professionals, community volunteers, faith leaders. So just as an introduction real quick to the Conversation Project website, there's a video here with Ellen Goodman. And then of course the video that we just showed you guys is here. So we would love to have you guys share this with all of your families, especially if they may not want to have a conversation. Send them this, you know, it's really engaging segment, I think. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and open the Conversation Starter Kit. And so you can see, here's some COVID resources, and there are a number of different links here. And they have had it translated into a number of different languages as well as audio versions. So that's really important. I think all of us today have English as a first language. And so if not, we'd be happy to share the Spanish version. I think is more prevalent in this area. So just really quick, actually you can open this online, fill it out, and then print as a either just print or print as a PDF. So I could put my name in here and fill it out directly online. Just so you know, you don't have to print it and then fill it out. I actually have carpal tunnel really bad, so it's hard for me to write. It's easier for me to type. So just wanted to share that part. And then there's a lot of guidance in this kit. How to get ready. Here are a couple of things to help you get started. Who do you want to have the conversation with? Do you have certain concerns? Get set, like start thinking about what matters most. And then either complete it together with your family or complete it and then bring it to your family. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the scale here as we go forward. I particularly, when I share this, I don't print it out and bring it. I usually share the link so that, as I mentioned, people have the link, they can share it with their family, or they can fill it out online and then just print and it's already filled out. So then this gives you a little more guidance about who to talk to, when's a good time to talk. I always put here, when is a good time to talk. I always put continuously. As soon as I do that, I'm going to spell it wrong. And where do you feel most comfortable talking? So there are some prompts here to help break the ice. And then I think we all went through the Go Wish, like what's really important to us. It's really great to let your family know, like, if I already have my financial affairs in order, maybe you don't want to share the details of that with them, but you can let them know that I already have my financial affairs in order. So your financial person that you choose for your will or finances, whoever you trust for that, does not have to be the same person as your medical decision maker. So you can let the medical decision maker know that I have this under control, and you may or may not want to share with them who that is. So there's just a lot here that really helps get those conversations started, and a lot of prompts to help you think through how to do this with your family. So we will be sending a link to this after I think we decided within the week or so that we're going to send it to everybody who's registered, and we are more than happy if you want to share with your loved ones or somebody else you know or anything like that. The real point here is to think through what matters most to you, and I think we've already had some feedback from a lot of you that we all think we already did that, right? And then it's great to have an opportunity to do that more. And now we are going to talk a little bit about the scales.
Yes, so this is one part of the starter kit that I find particularly helpful. It has scales, so it has a number of questions and gives you the opportunity to rate the strength of your opinion on a scale from 1 to 5. So I did one of the questions. So here's just one of several questions. As a patient, I'd like to know, on one end, only the basics about my condition and my treatment, and on the other end, all the details about my condition and my treatment. And maybe there's something in between. So maybe my feeling is, well, I'd like to know a little more than the basics. I'd like some information about my prognosis. So I'd like some information about what to expect. So if I'm going to experience a certain kind of deterioration, I'd like to know that so that I'm not surprised by it. There are other scales. So I mentioned one earlier. I would want to receive my care at home, or I wouldn't mind, on the other end of the scale, I wouldn't mind spending my last days in a healthcare facility. Or maybe there's something in between. I want to be at home as long as my care is not too taxing on my family, as long as my family doesn't have to provide injections or wound care or something that is difficult for them. So the Conversation Project Starter Kit offers you the ability to get into some of the degrees of nuance that might exist for you, rather than putting you in the position of saying it's either this or this. And that's one of the things I appreciate about this particular set of materials, is that you can tailor it to your specific wishes and your specific desires and communicate with your decision maker why you chose a 3 as opposed to a 1 or a 5 on this scale. So I want to know what to expect from the various treatment options. I want to know how my condition will progress up to the point that I'm able to understand, or I'm able to communicate some of the details that you might be able to offer around those decisions for your decision maker. So we are at the end of the material that we have prepared for you.
I guess I just want to share, if it's all right, a little bit about this also.
Good.
The Conversation Kit gives you some specific things related to care that you might need, and guiding your family in healthcare decisions. There are a lot more nuances to our end of life and our care that you may want to think about or consider or start having conversations. I know Mom and I started this conversation years ago, and sometimes my husband will be there going, what exactly are they talking about? Like, I don't really understand. But she and I know, and I think we could even be better about writing things down. But I'll just mention one situation. We were on a trip to Ensenada together, my husband and I, and Mom and Len, and we'd had this wonderful day, and we were sitting out on a patio having dinner on this place that kind of is over the ocean, and there's rocks beating against or ocean beating against the rocks, and we were just sitting there just having this wonderful, lovely day and conversation, great food, some wine. And Mom said, you know, I think in my last moments, I really want to hear the ocean. That's what I want to hear in my last moments. Like that's how I want to define my last moments. Like it's really going to make it. It's going to bring all these great memories back. And I was like, what a great thing to talk about. So do you want to hear beach, ocean, or do you want to hear waves crashing over the rocks? Because those are two different things, right? So there's an instance of a scale that is really emotional and spiritual for us in our relationship that we're able to share because we open this conversation. And if we get to a point where, I mean, even if she's in the hospital, I think she's coming home tomorrow, I'm probably going to bring that recording of the rocks crashing over, the ocean crashing over the rocks, just so she feels at peace and has some of these memories. So it really opens up a whole other part of a relationship that you can have with your family, and it's just brought so much to our lives. And I think spiritually it's really wonderful. So think about it like that. You know, they have some questions, but you can add your own. Print it on where you have the back of the sheet, so you can write down whatever you want.
Oh, thank you for sharing that memory. I hadn't thought about that for a while. That's great. That's great. Okay, so we have a few minutes to consider, well, a couple of things. One, our next steps, we are going to send you an email that will have links to the Conversation Project Starter Kit. You can download it, you can fill it in online, etc. I do recommend that you have a paper copy for your medical decision maker, just because they may need to carry that with them at some point. Because Carrie and I are both coaches, we're going to recommend to you that you choose an accountability partner, someone who's on this call or someone that you interact with regularly, and ask them to meet with you in a couple of weeks and to ask you what you've done with this. Because it's easy for this to get lost in the shuffle of daily life. And today you are more aware of the importance. Today you are more aware of the process and the resources. And tomorrow something will come up and this may slip. And so we really would love to see you choose an accountability partner to make sure that this doesn't get lost again. So our request of you is that over the next 2 weeks, you have one conversation, just one, with a person you want to know about your wishes for care. So even if you're not completely finished thinking about this, start a conversation with someone to let them know that you're working on it, to make it easier for you to start talking about this. That's the whole purpose of initiating a conversation. Even if it's not complete, just get started. You're ready enough. I mentioned earlier that the August Not Church program is going to follow up on this with some more specific and concrete details. John DeCecco is going to be leading that discussion on Saturday, August 22nd at 10 a.m. And the title is Making Emergency and End-of-Life Plans in Mexico. And John has accumulated and researched and drawn together some very helpful information and wants to help all of us benefit from the work he's done to be prepared, understanding that we do face a different situation here, that as residents of Mexico, but not citizens or perhaps even with ties to the US, our situation may be a little different. So John is going to be able to speak about that. And I don't know if you want to add anything, John?
Yeah, if I can. I just want to say that we have the great gift of living in this paradise. And what comes with that is the fact that we live in a different legal, cultural, it's a location where the care pathway and emergency response is not the same as the United States, where insurances have funny ways of helping or not helping us here in this area. And so all of those dimensions of care, and particularly if you have insurance that covers you in Mexico and may not be aware of that, all of those things are things that you need to be aware of when you plan what you want to have happen. And I would just add that under COVID, those pathways to care in Mexico have also changed. So I just think people need to be aware of what they may experience when they need help. And the last thing I want to comment on is, you know, care is on a continuum, and death is not always immediately predictable. So when you talk about someone with Alzheimer's, you're really talking about a certain end in most cases, but it can be a very long and protracted process. So it's important, I think, also for you to consider what care options are available for you here in Mexico. And we have the great benefit of being able to access a number of alternative and treatments which may not be available in the United States, but are available in places like the Middle East, in Europe, in Cuba, etc. So making care plans in Baja for us can be a bit more complicated. And then to manage expectations, I don't know that I have an end result for anybody. It's so highly, as you point out, so highly individualistic and very much dependent on how you see you want to manage your care. The great thing is that we have good caregivers here. We have doctors who make home visits, and there are a variety of things which, because of regulation in the United States, couldn't happen in your home, could happen here. But we also have restrictions about palliative care here. So those are all things people need to be aware of. And I look forward to the conversation. And hopefully I can address those issues with some justice. And finally, the question about death. And I would just leave you with the thought that if you don't have a Mexican doctor, it's really a good idea to have someone who knows your medical condition and has something about you on file. And I'll just leave it with that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Thanks. So there is, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot to talk about here. One of the things we will include in our email is a question about whether you're interested in continuing this workshop with a second session further down the line. So we'll figure out how we want to offer that to you and how we want to survey your response, and you'll be hearing that question. And Carrie, I think we probably should kind of give some information about what we might cover if we were doing it as an additional session. So we have.
Yeah, we already mentioned that we're recording, so
yes.
We'll put this on a YouTube so you can look back at it later, or we'll send a link when we publish that. And there are a couple questions that have come up in the chat. It was hard to facilitate, manage everything, and answer questions at the same time. So if you guys don't mind, we could go ahead and try to answer some of that. One was, do I interface with people who have VA medical benefits? I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I do personally, but I don't know anything about the VA system in San Diego. I know it's a federal system. It's very complicated. It doesn't run like a business like other health systems do. So I couldn't say how to navigate it. What I would encourage you to do is talk to your primary care provider. Let them know what your wishes are, who your healthcare agent. Make sure your advance directive is on file. Let them know where you are living, like if you need to come, and be transported into the US. I know there's this whole thing, like with my dad, if we call the ambulance, he has to be sent, offered to be sent to the VA emergency department. Otherwise, they'll deny his coverage. So if the VA isn't able to accept him, then he can go somewhere else and then they cover it. So, I mean, that's just one nuance I know, because somebody mentioned it to me. But I think the important thing here is maybe go to the Conversation Project website and maybe print out how to talk to your doctor and just start a conversation. It doesn't have to be complete, but just kind of let them know where you're at. So I think that's important. There's another question. If I want to donate organs, if I choose to die at home, is that still possible? Or do you need to be in a hospital on machines to donate organs? I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be happy to go ahead and look into it and ask some people that our palliative care doctor, he would definitely be able to let me know. I know as often as possible, we try to get people on hospice, and I know that is something that happens in the US. I also know that San Diego hospital system has been working, especially through COVID, increasingly with Tijuana healthcare providers and really doing that across the border. They've developed a ton of relationships where at UCSD we're, bringing care providers and bringing testing over to Tijuana. So it could be something that COVID actually has helped open up a lot of those cross-border kind of issues. But I'd be happy to look into that and follow up with the email. I'm sure our doctor there will be happy to answer those questions. I said that I want to have my dogs with me in the hospital, and is that possible to do? Or I want to have my dogs with me. Is it possible to do at the hospital, or do you have to be at home? If you have a service dog, they are allowed to come into the hospital. They have to be a registered service dog. Actually, I don't think they have to be registered. You just have to say the word, this is a service dog. And some health care systems have said only dogs. Some say any service animal. So I think it is going to depend on that hospital. I know a hospital I worked at in Oregon said they have to say it's a service animal and we're only allowing dogs. So I think that health system can say. But I just went online and registered my dogs as service dogs because I want to have them with me as often as possible. So it's possible to do, and your healthcare provider can also help with that. I think we already answered the question about having different advanced directives and different decision makers. And so we can try to do the best we can. I mean, the providers, what they're going to do is just try to mediate, bring in social work, try to get people to come to an agreement and follow the laws that, I mean, I'm not a doctor or a nurse, and so I don't know all of those laws. I just help them improve their processes. So we have a whole ethics team. I'm sure most hospitals do. And so hopefully if we get more upstream on it, then we can reduce some of that. Are there any other questions?
Some people are muted, so if you're asking a question and we're not responding, check that little microphone. Well,
I have a question, and I'm
okay.
curious about your recommendation. You mentioned that you need to have your advance directives on file with the care system in which you are. Do you recommend you just like have a copy of that, or that your advocate have a copy in hand, so wherever you may end up, particularly in this time of COVID, that they have the instrument they need? And is there any problem with that, or what would you recommend?
I would recommend that you absolutely have it. Maybe in your car. You're not always going to be in your car, but it's, I mean, as many copies as you can in the hands of as many people as you can. Definitely, if you know you're going to the hospital, try to have it. You may not end up where you think you're going. I know working at UC San Diego, we hear of people coming across from Mexicali, going to Imperial County, and then some people, they're just swamped over there. They can't handle, they can't treat all the COVID patients. So they're sending them to San Diego. They're sending them to Irvine. They're sending them to LA. They're sending them wherever there's a bed or a ventilator or an ICU. So make sure that your healthcare agent or the person you have chosen, even if you choose one kid and the other kid is not the medical decision maker, make sure everybody has a copy of it. So even they could say, well, you know, so-and-so's at work right now, but I know that they're supposed to make a decision, but here's the paperwork. So I would overly plan as much as you can, especially in this particular time.
And I think that I have said this in other settings, but I don't think I said it today. I strongly recommend that you designate more than one person, because your first person, for whatever reason, may not be available. And if they're not available and you need a decision to be made, if there is not another person to step up, then you are in that situation. You're in the same situation as you would be in if you didn't have a directive. So play it safe. This is the belt and suspenders approach. Make sure you cover your bases. And obviously you can hear from my approach that I'm someone who does not want excessive healthcare resources spent at the end of my life. I've worked in healthcare for a number of years, and I know that typically patients consume 85% of the healthcare resources they will use their entire life in the last 2 years. And often that is because extraordinary measures are taken to keep them alive, maybe with their wishes, maybe not. My wish is for that not to happen. And so I'm planning around that because that's my value. So don't let my bias influence you. After I harp on that, sorry.
Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I emailed my own advanced directives as a PDF to myself and to the people that may be, you know, to family members.
Yes.
So
Great
that
idea.
no matter where I end up, they have a copy they can access in their phone. They can forward it to the hospital personnel, so that even if there's not a paper copy available at the time, everyone can have access to it.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Really
Good suggestion.
great. I'm going to steal that one.
Yeah. Good.
Well, thank you everybody for sharing a couple hours with us this morning. We're happy to be here as resources for our community, and please share the information far and wide, and let us know if you have questions.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mom?
No, I think that's it. Other than thank you, Carrie. It's a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Marty.
All right.
Thank you.
Carrie, thank
so
you.
much. It was really excellent.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks.
It's good to see all of you.
Thank you.
Without a mask.
So much.
Nice
Thanks
to
so
see
much.
things.
It was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.